I think my honourable colleague would agree, even though we always can't come to agreement, whether it's in this House or it's with associations, as long as we continue to recognize that there is a need to have dialogue. And so we can put dollars on the table, and sometimes it will be perceived as enough, sometimes it will be perceived as not enough, but as long as we continue to dialogue, I think that is really important here. So, you know, we also, so we'll continue to work with the early intervention you know, groups to ensure that their concerns are heard, and we'll continue to invest again using the dollars of this plan that we can.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another question. What commitment has the department taken on to streamline access? We know a lot of the children that have disabilities are they're receiving a range of services, whether it be through Department of Health, Department of Education, and Department of Health and Promotion. I guess what I'd like to know is how actively, and again, we're moving into the breaking down the silos that we've seen with the child youth strategy. What efforts are you making in your department and your staff making to streamline the access to some of those programs and to bring it all together with your other ministerial colleagues?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and again I thank my honourable colleague. The issue of the breaking down of some of those silos and of those stumbling blocks, if we can, is one that is very real. And I know we're talking specifically about childcare here right now, and we're talking about youth. It exists across the board. There wouldn't be an issue that my honourable colleague and I could discuss where it wouldn't be, you know, part of the main thrust of the discussion. We have, it's always amazing to people that we don't do it now, and that we weren't doing it. We talk about, you know, the coming together and the collaborative way that we approach things, and people say, well, weren't you always doing that? And no, we weren't. You know, it never ceases to amaze me. So we have made significant gains. We have made significant stride. I talk about the entire you know, social prosperity piece that the department's embarked upon in coordination with you know, the understanding that they don't, the social departments of government or the social aspects of life don't exist in isolation. They exist in cooperation with the economic factors, with the environmental goals, with the you know, all of those, the multitude of issues that are out there. So we have made, we've made the commitment within our department to truly streamline and to truly look at all of the programs that we offer. Again, it goes directly to those roundtable discussions that go on amongst senior levels of bureaucrats, and it has to start at that level of understanding so that it can work its way through the system. And I know that all of the information that's shared about programming, about access to services, is being done in a manner that, that encourages that, looking at an individual, not looking at the issue, like looking at the individual and seeing what their needs are, and not saying, oh, I need to classify that individual as a, you know, as a level 4 category. No, I need to classify that person as an individual. So the points about the, you know, the youth strategy and how are we actually putting some of those things, because we knew those gaps were there. We admit them, and we acknowledge them, and we put the dollars there. We're adding another $2 million to the strategy this year to ensure that we monitor what we put in place already, because if you can't monitor it, you don't know if it's working or not, and then to move forward on it. So we've made the commitment. The deputy minister, the deputy ministers have made that commitment, and then through them it flows down through. The true monitor will be to see the success with the children in the province.
The Honourable, the member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to move on briefly and touch on the transition homes. My honourable colleague from Dartmouth South Portland Valley will speak to it again on Monday, but I just want to touch on one in particular that's in my home riding of Dartmouth North. Now, I know that there has been some consultation, some good feedback from a number of organizations. I have read the report. I have it here in front of me. And one home in particular, and actually the executive director, Joe Gibson from the Freedom Foundation, would like me to extend an invitation to you. This is an organization in our community that's existed for 20 years, a very successful program. I work with a number of individuals that have successfully moved on out of the program. Joe and the staff have done a great job, but we've yet to see a minister actually come over. And we have a meet and greet once a year, and I will get you the information on that in plenty of time so that you could schedule in. He would love to see you come over and actually see the goings on and how the programs actually work, because it's a 3-step program. And right now we have a lot of younger men that are experiencing that program. So I know the report's been done, and I know I brought it up last year to you, Madam Minister, and the importance of potentially having core funding. And I know that the report had spoken to that particular part that would see these homes be successful. Now, part of the report stipulated that we didn't want to have homes that were giving treatment. This is a long-term shelter. Like I said, it's a 3-step program. So what had actually happened, there was one home that was actually dropped in Cape Breton. So there's two questions I have. Out of the findings of the report, an allotment was made and is being provided through the Department of Community Services to the Freedom Foundation. That being said, we've talked about core funding. We're moving on to that model. I've been informed by the executive and the administrator there that they will still be short, as they have been in previous years, as you and I had worked on together last year, a $60,000 decrease next January. So they're going to be in trouble, even though they have core funding, and we put in the budget, and we've been told, well, we have to, when it arises, tell us why. Well, with the rising costs of food and fuel, we know why. So it's budgeted for and we don't get it. So if you can talk to that a little bit, why we're not, and I'll tell you what happens, and it's public perception. When the government it chose to spend $300 million at the end of the fiscal year, an organization like the Freedom Foundation says, well, 60,000 is nothing. And that's where it hits home. I can't get a shelter increase, but they spent $300,000. And not that all that money was spent frivolously, because we know that students had benefited from it. But that's the public perception. I have the executive director saying, look, we told them. We've been telling them for years. But we're still going to be $60,000 short. So I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit about the final report and what your hopes are, so that we can have that funding in place, so that I'm not getting a call in December saying, look, I'm going to have to put out the notices again, or can you talk to this person? Because again, it's putting the center in crisis. It's putting 15 individuals that benefit from this program in serious crisis. And I'd also recommend that, I know in the past I've spoken to the previous Minister of Justice, who unfortunately a lot of these gentlemen have come through the justice system, because they're dealing with mental health issues and addictions. Perhaps we could have that conversation with your department and his department to come up with some sort of funding or working relationship.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I thank my honourable colleague for the very important discussion regarding transition houses, recovery houses. It's always a challenge to embark upon a discussion that does have stigma attached to it, and that is very unfortunate, because the issues are very real. And though we could stick our heads in the sand and pretend that they don't exist, that would be very irresponsible. So the issues are real. Folks like the Freedom Foundation and the other recovery houses, the Marguerite Centre, the other folks across this province that work with men and women and families who find themselves in need of those services, they do face challenges with stigma attached to what they do, and that is extremely unfortunate. The role that we play needs to be one of helping to remove that stigma, as we talked about earlier, and bringing them into the mainstream of the reality that this exists in our communities, and that these are necessary and very valuable resources for the folks who find themselves in need of the services and programs provided. I want to say that I would be delighted to come to see the good folks over at the Freedom Foundation. I know that it's always hard to, again, work schedules out, but I will look forward to that official request and invitation, and I would love to come along and see the good work that I know that's going on over there. So we do know that there are challenges when it comes to budget pressures. We did talk about this last year. I have had discussion with other folks, other boards, and other members, trying to get a grasp on how do we creatively address some of those challenges. We know that the costs are rising. We know that the organizations are being creative, and so we again put our dollars in place and say, please be more creative. And so that's not enough either. We have to say, please be more creative, and here's how we can help you be creative. And I think that that's something that is incumbent upon us to do. We do know that the salaries are negotiated through at our transition houses. The salaries are negotiated through union negotiation, and they reflect an increase through those negotiations. But that doesn't go to the operating that you were referring to, and so I acknowledge that that's not an increase that they see. I do want to make reference, though, to the fact that we were pleased to see in this year's budget the increase of $300,000 to the community-based organizations that we provide the grants to. And we know that that is an acknowledgement, and I guess I'm offering this, even though it's not the group that my honourable colleague asked the question about, I'm offering this as evidence or as proof that we understand that there are pressures out there. Those folks hadn't seen an increase in almost a decade, and so now they're seeing an increase. And so I offer it perhaps as a measure of hope that my honourable colleague will see that we do recognize that those challenges are there. We look for creative ways to solve those challenges and to be able to bring dollars to the table. And I do agree that the Department of Community Services and the Department of Health, because we do have and the Department of Justice, we do have a woven responsibility here. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to look at the and health promotion and protection, to look at the manner that we provide assistance, and we don't do it in isolation, but we ensure that we do it in cooperation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for your information, I know that right now the Nova Scotia Gaming Corporation has approached the VLT retailers. There's been meetings recently, as of last week, I believe. There's 326 current retailers. 118 of them make over a $400,000 threshold. And there's some changes coming that will have an additional $5 million come to the government. So I would talk with your colleagues, and perhaps that is an area where we can tap into. Because we know that the Freedom Foundation has received funds from the Gaming Foundation. So when that contract's signed, if that contract is signed, that will bring the government an additional $5 million. I want to move on to the housing. Just touch on it briefly. Again, Kate Breton-Over, my colleague, will speak to this again on Monday, but I just want to touch on it. Last year's budget, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, there was an additional $23 million that was earmarked specifically for improvements in our housing stock currently owned by the province. I'm wondering where that money was spent, what areas of the province, because I can tell you that in the area of Dartmouth North, we have Nova Court, Scotia Court, the Uniacke Square area has, I've recently had some housing meetings with those individuals that reside there. We haven't really seen any of that money being spent. I'm wondering if you can tell me where it has been spent at, that $23 million specifically for the housing.
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
George. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. thank my honourable colleague. We are hopping around to issues, but that's okay. That's what we do. That's what we do in estimates debate. And before I do go to the question of the housing, I do want to thank my honourable colleague for the information regarding the gaming. And I will raise that issue with the minister responsible for gaming. $5 million. It would be remiss on my part to leave any of that on the table if I could provide that to the good folks who provide the services to those individuals who so desperately need it as a resource available to them. So I thank him for that, and I certainly will raise that. The affordable housing program, I did mention in my introductory remarks the different dollars that were spent. Of course, the affordable housing program agreement, the total is the $56.2 million, and it seems like a tremendous amount of money. My goodness, how quickly we spend it, and how quickly we are able to provide homes for those Nova Scotians who are looking to us for those homes. So I'm just looking back through my notes to find the exact specific locations in Central to provide that information to my colleague. Under the Affordable Housing Program Agreement, Central Region, there were 139 new rentals, 12 rental preservations, 6 new home purchases, 45 home preservation for the total of 199 just in the Central Region in itself. And of course, I might be able to find the exact locations, and if I can't, I will look through my notes and try and find those exact spots, because I know that was what my honourable colleague asked, was exactly where were they. And I did read off some locations, but I would be happy to provide those to him at a later date if he'd rather move on to another question. I did read some of those exact addresses, and we do continue to work with developers for an increase in the affordable housing under the affordable housing portfolio, because we recognize that some of our largest pressures are here in the Central Region, and so we continue to partner. Partnering is the key point to all of this, to the housing challenges that we have. We have to partner with other levels of government, and to partner with our developers to ensure that we can maximize all of the programs that are available to us.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to jump around again. I'm going to move into the child welfare system. Some real tough questions, as you're aware. I've had opportunities to work with senior staff on a number of issues. I know you're aware of that, and it's a very difficult situation. I know with the child youth strategy coming out, some of the initiatives that you're going to take on, and again, my colleague from Halifax Citadel will speak specifically to some of the youth initiatives that the government's currently taking on. I believe and understand that the department is well aware and are well on their way to redesigning the actual placement of a youth or child when they come in care of the province. And I'm quite confident that, as tough a job as it is, we haven't done it perfectly, and that, I guess that's why we're changing the way we do things. I'm just wondering, when we're talking about placement of children, I know we've heard it mentioned at the Standing Committee of Community Services, a 3-tiered potentially placement system. I'm wondering where we're at with that now, and how long that's going to take to be fully up and running, so that we can really, really help these kids that come into our care.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And there's no question that the Department of Community Services has many levels of challenging issues. Child welfare has to be the one that is the most difficult for all of us involved. Again, I want to say, for the record, that my honourable colleague has demonstrated tremendous compassion, tremendous understanding, and a level of involvement that, though sometimes I caution him, could perhaps be a little bit too much involvement sometimes, and I only caution him for his own good. His compassion for those individuals is very real. Child welfare is challenging across the country, It was interesting when we had a meeting on a totally separate issue. The ministers who were at the table talked about what they found, the social service ministers that were there talked about the most challenge, and we all agreed that it was the child welfare issues. The cases are becoming so complex. The challenges are so very real. And again, it's another one of those areas where we tread very lightly because it's such a delicate area. And again, I know that staff who are with us here today, who deal with this day in and day out, know just how very challenging it is. And so I do want to make a specific reference to my honourable colleague's question without just giving overviews. And the review, certainly, we are making considerable progress with the placement redesign initiative. And our vision is certainly to develop a more comprehensive, responsive, and effective continuum of placement and treatment options for children and youth who are in care of the minister. And we know that those children don't come to us easily, Mr. Chair. And so the actions that are underway right now that I will identify for my honourable colleague, the hiring of the 4 child welfare specialists who will be responsible for making decisions on the placement of children and youth based on their assessed level of care. And so that is underway. They have been hired. The development of a tool that will assist social workers to complete standardized assessments for all children in care. That consistent standardized level of assessment is so key. Certainly the development of the evidence-based treatment and the standardized programming in residential services, and the introduction of service agreements with service providers to ensure accountability and effective programming and treatment for our youth and children in care. The advanced and specialized training is underway for youth care staff employed at our residential facilities. The foster care and adoption services are now provincial resources, and the recruitment has begun on an emergency foster care network, Mr. Chair. And so we are fast on our way to putting in place those needed requirements to ensure that the best possible work that we can do is being done for those children and youth, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to pay special tribute to the social workers that have to deal within the child protection section of the department. I know there's a crisis right now, and it's because of those difficult or the ever-increasing difficult situations that we find with the children that we are taking in care. So I want to thank them for their efforts, and it is definitely a tough job. Do I overstep my boundaries sometimes? It's difficult. It's difficult. It's difficult when, and I guide myself. Like I said, there's an onus on the child in care to understand the responsibility that they have, that they still need to understand that they have a say in the direction that their life goes into. But there's an onus on us as well to provide those supports that will enable them to understand that and get set. And Madam Minister, you know, we have had great success. I think great success in some of the cases that I've brought to you. Some of the issues around child protection is always about services for families. We have an ombudsman for children in care, and one of the things that I've always thought was that potentially a family, there should be perhaps an ombudsman for the family, for the parents that lose their child. And I recognize that not all parents come with the skills that we need. And we've seen that with generations of social assistance recipients. You know, we've often talked over the years about children having children. The Family Resource Centers try to close that gap and have had some successes, but we still see an increase in the number of children that we currently take in care in this province. And it's, when you think of, you know, the 980,000 people we have in this province and how many kids we actually have in care, it's kind of disturbing. But that being said, one of my real issues, and I think it's something we have to work on collectively as MLAs, to draft up some sort of legislation. I know it's a touchy subject. A child in care cannot sign himself out of care until he is or she is of legal age. But a child in care can walk out of a group home situation at the age of 14 and be on our streets. And I understand that legally we have to give them that right, but I definitely think it's something that we really, either we have to provide so much services for that individual to make them understand that they aren't of age to make the proper decisions for themselves. And we've seen an ever-increasing number of individuals that prey upon young girls in particular that are in care right now in these group homes, and they end up usually in Montreal or Toronto prostituting. And they haven't signed themselves out, but they know it's their legal right to step out at the age of 14. And I'm really, again, it's not an issue I want to bring to the Florida legislature during a question period. When we see a young person making a bad decision and causing harm to themselves or to another individual, I don't want to have to come here and question you on that. So I'm wondering if you can just indulge me and give me your feelings towards the possibility of working together on something like that. Because more and more we see the young people, if we don't catch them at that early age, and I know the child youth strategy hopefully will assist with that. I know that recently we have a young gentleman that, with the federal funds that have come down, the 1.9 million recently from Minister Day, to try to figure out why these kids are doing it, the kids that are at risk, the elementary and the junior high age. We have the benefits of now having an individual that's going to work with our community in Dartmouth North. But this piece, I guess the thing that bothers me is that when something does happen, when a youth who happens to be in care, who's 14 or 15, steals a car or assaults somebody, and then we find out that they're in care, society doesn't look at that. Society looks at, well, it's a bad kid. And you know what? Maybe it was bad parents. And we really have to get past that. You know, when we see incidents like Brittany Murphy, we think about the really, and it was an incredible assault that the young girl had taken. But there was issues around that. There was many issues around that assault. And the fact that that young girl was in care, I have to question what kind of resources did we provide to her? Or how much didn't she get that led her to making decisions like this? So with that, I'll await your comments.
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And the issue that my honourable colleague raises is one that there are as many issues, there would be as many answers as there are to the issues. It's just so complex. And again, I know that his compassion for the children and youth and the whole issue of child welfare is very real, and that it isn't raised. And I appreciate his statement about not raising it in question period to get a political win on it. And I know that that's why when he brings issues to me, my staff know that they're real issues for us to work on for the betterment of those children, not for political gain. And so to be able to discuss today in this open forum is a much more rational and reasonable way to have these discussions. I know that I know that it's been raised different times about a child advocate in other provinces that would exist. We have the ombudsman here. I know that there are different levels of looking at that to ensure that individuals' rights and freedoms are not taken advantage of. I know that, although I'm not a lawyer and don't pretend to be one, I know that there are tremendous charter issues that would be very real if some of the things that we muse about, if we try to put some of those things into place. And so I'm never against taking issues back to the department and asking senior staff to look at them to see if there's some way that we can do something within the parameters of the law and within the parameters of the charter to ensure that individuals are not put at risk, to ensure that they don't put themselves at risk and others don't put them at risk. And so certainly any time that we can do that, we will. I know that my honourable colleague knows that even with some of those young aged individuals, legal counsel is provided, and I think that's key because it's oftentimes that's what they truly do need, that legal counsel. And I know my honourable colleague has stepped over the bounds too in the legal parameters and has actually extended himself for the betterment of the child to ensure that legal counsel was there, and to ensure that it was a quality legal counsel for the individuals. And so I don't say that as a criticism, I say it as a recognition that he has done that as an extension of the policy that's in place. He goes beyond that. I do look forward to the child and youth strategy results. I do want to recognize the federal initiatives that my colleague referenced through Minister Day. Anytime we can partner with other levels of government, anytime we can partner with agencies, anytime we can partner with the local police departments, or again, you know, that collaborative approach with child welfare, with our service providers, with the folks on the ground, I think that everyone in this House would agree is a positive move, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I agree with you on the charter challenges. I mean, it's a touchy issue, but what I've seen, especially over the last year, you know, all the talk about youth and youth crime and all levels of government trying to desperately address it. And unfortunately, a lot of kids that are in care throughout our country are experiencing the youth crime issue, right? And I think it is an opportunity to talk to our federal partners, municipal partners, and if we can come together collectively, I think we could look at that, because it's an important piece. As you know, I dread seeing an individual at 14 drift off and then at 19 come back at somewhere even more damaged for help, and you know that. I want to go back into the housing, and a recommendation I would make. I've been able to participate in a lot of different housing forms lately, especially over the last year, and we talk about affordable housing, and I think affordable housing should actually be changed, because what's affordable to some isn't affordable to all, and the CMHC formula doesn't always mix with incomes or individuals that need affordable housing, say, but come with medical costs and different disabilities and whatnot that require more of their income. I think it should be called livable housing, and because our incomes aren't all the same. And one piece of advice I would give is to, I know with the federal NDP, I've spoken with the leader, I've spoken with Mr. Pai, who was here today, to encourage them, as I would you, to talk to your federal counterparts about a new initiative, a new housing initiative across this country, because I know last year in the business plan you talked about a study on homelessness, and I'll let you speak to that in a second as to where that's at. But we are in a crisis. The community I represent, there's absolutely no doubt. One bedrooms traditionally go for a livable space that's in a safe part of the community, goes for about $600, and when you have a senior that's living on less than $10,000 a year, or somebody on social assistance living on less than $8,000 a year. These are difficult situations, especially now with the new 8% hike in the electricity. Those are individuals that, like I said before, can't wait for that $200 or $125 check at the end of the year. So I want to encourage you to do that, and maybe you can just speak to the homeless piece from last year's business plan as to where that might be right now.
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to my honourable colleague. Do you know, I was thinking as you were speaking, a big part of the learning curve for me when I came to elected office was wrapping my head around the continuum of the housing technology that was out there. And I remember trying to understand the difference between affordable housing, which your recommendation for livable housing makes sense, but affordable housing, public or social housing, housing supplements, you know, rent supplements as we would call them, subsidized housing, homelessness, and that, I mean, the continuum is vast. And sometimes we confuse ourselves by trying to figure out what program are we really talking about here? Are we talking about a homelessness initiative? Are we talking about affordable housing? Are we talking about modest housing? Are we talking about public housing? And the general population don't always understand either. So I think a big part of the challenge is truly understanding what the portfolio looks like. What does our entire housing portfolio look like? Because there's a big difference between affordable housing and the programs that are being able to be offered through affordable housing and a social housing program or social housing complex that would be out there. And so that's a big challenge. I don't know if changing the name will take, I know changing the name won't take the problem away, but certainly I understand what you're saying, that what might be affordable for someone might be totally unattainable for someone else, and totally, you know, not even within the realm of being affordable given their circumstances. Specifically to the homelessness initiative, I know that there has been some work done on it, and I know that there is a draft report at this stage. The draft report has not been shared with me, but certainly I will investigate back at the department what stage we're at with that strategy. Thank you.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North with about 20 seconds.
I guess the important piece in that discussion, and obviously, again, it's a multi-layered issue, is the fact that we have to speak more to it. There's another symposium coming up at the end of the month that I'll attend on housing stock, and the many layers, as you spoke to. But what I would do is encourage you to talk with your federal partners, as I have, and insist that that's in their platforms in the next federal election. Thank you.
Order, please. Time for the NDP caucus has expired. We'll now recognize the honourable member for Richmond. You have until 12:43.
It's not very much time, Mr. Chair, but we'll do our best to raise a few points with the Minister. Minister, we had the chance to speak a bit about mileage rates, and we also had the chance to speak about seniors housing and elevators. One of the programs last year, which we were pleased to see brought back by the government through some persuasion on the part of our caucus, was the Winter Works program. The Winter Works program was a program similar to the provincial employment program for students, which allowed non-profit organizations to be able to hire people to work during the winter months. It was a terrific program. It helped a lot of organizations, gave a lot of relief to overworked volunteers. That is what we were hoping to see when the Winter Works program was brought back. Unfortunately, the program that was brought back was through the housing commissions, and that they hired people to work on some of the housing stock. So it did provide employment, which was one of the purposes of it, but it's not exactly what we were hoping to see it as. I'm wondering if the Minister could indicate to us, is this program remaining with her department, or is it going to be sent to economic development or any other department, and are we going to see Winter Works as it was meant to be, a financial assistance to non-profit groups to be able to hire individuals during the winter season?
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. To my honourable colleague, we're always ready to receive good ideas from our colleagues across the way, and I know that the Winter Works program was one of those programs that that was raised by the Liberal caucus, and so we were pleased to be able to take the $750,000 Winter Works program and function it through our department. And while it might not have been what my honourable colleague was hoping for, we were very pleased to have the 130 job opportunities. So it was like a win-win, because we had the 130 job opportunities and we also had the work done within our housing stock. And so it went beyond those jobs. I do know that the workshop that addressed the resume preparation and the skills development, identification, job search techniques, etc., was of great benefit to those employees. And I have had the nod of the head that it is going to stay with the Department of Community Services. There isn't in my notes, there's no indication that it's going to the Department of Economic Development unless the Minister of Economic Development tells me any different.
The Honourable Member for Richmond.
Well, and I'd hate to take away money from her department that can go into housing stock and everything else, but the initial intent of the Winter Works program was not to help with the housing stock. It was to help nonprofit organizations, again, very similar to the provincial employment program for students. So I would hope that the Minister would talk with the Minister of Economic Development to see how we can arrange this so that that is exactly where that work is going. And I do hope that the Minister of Finance may be able to find monies to allow the Minister of Community Services to keep that fund to assist with our housing stock, but it's essential that we find the means of helping volunteer organizations and nonprofit groups, especially during the winter periods. This was a way of giving work experience that helped a number of individuals. In fact, in some cases, they were clients of the Minister of Community Services that were given these employment opportunities to have real-life working skills, and I'm sure the Minister would be very supportive of that initiative. So I do hope that we do get to see Winter Works doing what it was intended to do, and providing these organizations with opportunities, and providing as well nonprofit organizations with some much needed assistance. One of the other matters, and I believe in her opening comment the Minister made reference to the new adult day center which has been opened on Ilma Dam in Richmond County. Speaker, that project has been a tremendous success. I know they are looking forward to having an official opening, and I recommended that they wait till the House was done so that the Minister would have the opportunity to attend and to personally see the benefits, because we had the Regional Occupation Centre in Port Hawkesbury that had a limit on how many individuals could attend it, and due to issues of traveling, which I've spoken about before, and it was very difficult for some families to be able to send their loved one to the Regional Occupation Centre in Port Hawkesbury. Unfortunately, that board was able to work very closely with the new board created on Ilma Dam for that facility, and I was under the impression that this new adult daycare would bring back some of the residents from Ilma Dam who were going to the Rock Centre, but it was made very clear to me that that was not the intent. The intent was to actually bring clients from Ilma Dam who were not going to the Rock Centre and provide them with a place to go, and that is exactly what it has done. And I can tell you, and I'm sure the Minister's seen some of these stories, individuals who had, for the most part, lived with their parents their entire lives and had very little interaction outside are suddenly in an environment where they have a tremendous amount of interaction. They're finding talents that no one even knew that they had before, and it's just been a tremendous story, and everyone who's spoken to me about it has talked about the success and what a wonderful initiative it is. One of the issues, though, Minister, is that there's a limit to how many clients they can bring in with the one staff person, which has been funded by your department to date, which you've committed to and the funding's been put in place. My question is the Minister prepared to look at funding an additional position based on the success that has been achieved at that facility on Ilma Dam and the now demand for more positions available? Will the Minister entertain that? If I'm not mistaken, I don't believe the commitment from the department was a large sum of money for that one position. Is the Minister willing to look at expanding that to possibly a second staff person at that facility?
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank my honourable colleague for bringing both of those issues. I do want to go back for a moment to just make a wrap-up comment about the Winter Works program. I absolutely, it will be with mixed emotions that I have a discussion with the Minister of Economic Development, because I don't want to lose it out of my department, because I do see the value in it staying with our housing folks. But out of certainly respect for the member, I will make that inquiry and ensure that we make sure that the nonprofits are included in those discussions. The Rock Centre in Ilma Dam is absolutely one of our greatest, one of the great success stories that we have. And I love those success stories, because all too often we don't get a chance to bask in the glory of those success stories. So it really is a treat to know that the folks at the Rock Centre in Ilma Dam are experiencing those new, exciting challenges of life that we're able to provide. And it's for that very reason, Mr. Chair, that the $6 million investment this year in this year's budget for the SPD program across the province is so very important for all of those folks in Nova Scotia who are just like the folks that my honourable colleague brought forward. And so the question that he raised, will I consider it? Absolutely, we will consider it in the large scope of the SPD program, and I'm sure that the good folks of Ilma Dam will continue to receive the best services and quality of life they can. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Order, please. The time allotted for estimates today has expired. Now call on the Acting Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair, I move that the Chair now do rise and the committee report progress.
Got to do it all.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on Supply reports.
Committee's met and made progress and begs leave to sit again.
Carried. The Honourable, the Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That concludes the government's business for today. I move that we adjourn to meet again Monday. The hours will be from 3 p.m. until 9 p.m. After the daily routine, we'll move into Committee of the Whole House on Supply. Time permitting, following that, government business will be public bills for second reading. Following numbers: number 120, 126, 127, 130, 131, 133, 148, 151, and 156.
The question before the House is that we shall now rise and meet again on Monday between the hours of 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. Are you ready for the question? All in favour signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. We will adjourn till 3 p.m. on Monday.